I knew I was being erased the moment Victoria Langford, our freshly elected HOA president, opened her perfectly glossed mouth in the community clubhouse that smelled like lemon pledge and passive aggression. She strolled in like she'd just been crowned queen of Willow Creek Estates. Iced latte in one hand, a binder thicker than the Bible in the other, wearing a blazer so stiff it could probably file its own liens. "We're reinventing everything," she declared, clicking through slides that looked suspiciously like the ones I'd spent 3 years perfecting back when this place was nothing but dirt and dreams. Not a single thank you. Not a nod to the woman who'd actually written the original covenants that kept the lawns green and the drama contained. Then came the line that still makes my coffee taste like battery acid. "Let's keep the background noise to a minimum today. Ladies and gentlemen," she smirked, eyes laser-locked on me in the back row like I was yesterday's mulch. I didn't flinch. I just nodded like the good little ghost I'd apparently become. But inside, something clicked into place, cold, sharp, and deliciously final. The kind of clarity you get when you realize the only person who can save your legacy is the one they try to delete. Most folks wouldn't believe how fast a neighborhood can rewrite your entire history. I'd been here since the first bulldozer rolled in. I designed the Willow Creek Estates logo myself on a secondhand laptop while the developer was still arguing over sewer lines. I stayed up until 3 a.m., crafting the language that turned a bunch of half-built houses into the prestigious, family-friendly enclave we sold to every soccer mom within 50 miles. While the original board was busy chasing grants and praying the project didn't flop, I was the one who insisted we lock down the brand before some knockoff community stole the name. And because I never demanded applause, never chased the spotlight, just results, I became invisible the second they decided they didn't need the original glue anymore. Victoria wasn't the villain. She was the symptom. The symptom of every HOA that starts as neighbors helping neighbors and morphs into a petty dictatorship wearing khakis and a name tag that says president. Hey, if you're still here and you've ever been the quiet one doing all the heavy lifting while someone else grabs the microphone, smash that like button and subscribe. It keeps stories like this alive for every homeowner who's ever been fined for the wrong shade of beige. Back in that meeting, I watched Victoria butcher the community voice I'd spent years refining over potluck complaints and late-night emails. She replaced thoughtful guidelines with buzzwords like elevated living standards and zero-tolerance excellence. "We're going full modern enforcement," she announced, like she'd invented the concept of being a control freak. I counted 4 factual errors in her first 5 minutes. Nobody cared. The board was too busy nodding along, drunk on the cheap thrill of new power. She could have suggested fining people for breathing too loudly, and someone would have called it visionary. Afterward, I walked straight to my car without a word. A sweet retired teacher tried to catch my eye with that pitying sorry look. I didn't return it. I wasn't mad. I wasn't even surprised. I was already mentally packing my contributions out of their story and back into my own safe. That's the beauty of being overlooked long enough. You start moving like a shadow. Always there, never noticed, until you decide the lights come on. By the time I reached my kitchen table, the heat in my cheeks had cooled to something useful. I opened my laptop and began the surgical removal. Unsubscribed from every committee thread. Declined a new rebranding task force invites. Set my out of office to something vague and permanent. No drama. No emails. Just clean cuts. Let them feel the absence or not. They thought they were done with me. But what they forgot, what even I had almost forgotten until that exact afternoon, was the rainy Tuesday 6 years ago when everything was still chaos and the developer was writing checks with hope and prayers. I'd insisted on one thing before we even had official board meetings: securing the brand name. No lawyers, no budget, just me, my credit card, and a $225 filing fee at the USPTO. Trademark file number 291. Owner, Laura Bennett. Not the HOA, not the developer. Me. Because back then, the CEO type guy had laughed and said, "Just handle it. Laura, we'll clean it up later." Later never came. Funding hit. Houses sold. And everyone got too busy counting money to remember who actually owned the name they'd built an empire on. Victoria had already printed out massive new mood boards, plastered them across the clubhouse like her personal Pinterest shrine to beige minimalism. Willow Creek 2.0, someone whispered in awe. Victoria Core. I thought bitterly. Nobody asked where I was. Nobody wondered why my name vanished from the share drive or why I wasn't in the new rules committee. It was like I'd never existed. They moved on with the confidence of people who'd never once checked the paperwork. I sat at my desk, headphones in, watching the chaos unfold like a Netflix documentary I didn't ask for. Victoria was already renaming committees with nauseating flair. Standards Enforcement Unit for the old Architectural Review Board. Neighbor Harmony Patrol for what used to be simple complaint resolution. She repurposed paragraphs I'd written 3 fiscal years ago and presented them as revolutionary gospel. I didn't correct her. I didn't ping the group chat. I just sipped my bitter coffee from the mug I got at our very first block party and kept quietly scrubbing my fingerprints from the system. If they wanted a nobody, I'd give them the full experience. It was around 2 p.m. when Margaret from legal wandered past my house, casual drive-by, thermos in hand, eyebrow arched like she knew something. Heard about Victoria's big rebrand push? She asked through the screen door. She's fast-tracking new filings. Wants the portfolio airtight before the annual meeting. Already submitted 4 provisional trademarks for the updated logo and slogan. I froze, but only for a heartbeat. Trademark. The word landed like a match on dry grass. I hadn't thought about file 291 in years. It was ancient, dusty, probably forgotten by everyone except the government database. But existed, and it was mine. The office, well, my home office, smelled like fresh printer toner and the faint lavender sanitizer the cleaning lady used. It felt fitting somehow. Victoria had already started a reign of terror with the kind of petty rules that make you question why anyone buys in an HOA no flags except on designated holidays. Grass no taller than 2.5 inches, measured with their fancy laser tool. Of course, mailbox colors standardized to sophisticated slate. She even sent out a memo about appropriate holiday lights, banning anything that might distract from the elevated aesthetic. All while her own driveway looked like a junkyard of political signs from last election. I watched it all from my front window, like a nature documentary titled, When Neighbors Become Overlords. The Johnsons got fined $250 for their kids' basketball hoop being 3 inches too close to the curb. Mrs. Alvarez was cited for her roses being too vibrant. And through it all, Victoria smiled that tight, Botox-adjacent smile, and called it preserving property values. Meanwhile, I was busy becoming the ghost they thought I already was. Removed my admin access from the HOA portal. Pulled my name from every legacy guideline document. Deleted 3 old wiki entries that still carried my original wording. Surgical. Clean. If I was invisible, let's make it official. Around 3 o'clock the next day, the first hint of trouble surfaced in the reply all thread, nobody reads until it's too late. Legal had begun submitting the new trademark applications to match Victoria's flashy rebrand. Expedited service. Desperate cover letters. The works. Then came Margaret's email. Dry as a courtroom transcript. USPTO flagged existing conflict. Original mark registered under individual, not the association. Need confirmation of assignment or transfer. Silence. Then the follow-up. Owner mismatch. Anyone have the documentation? Another pause. Then a message that froze the entire neighborhood Slack like a bad Wi-Fi signal. Owner listed as Laura Bennett. File 291. Still active. I was folding laundry on my couch when the notifications started pinging. Didn't need to open them. I already knew. The system was doing the work for me now. Victoria had spent weeks strutting around like she owned the voice of Willow Creek. She thought branding was just new fonts and a slogan that sounded like it came from a corporate retreat. But branding is law. Branding is paper, timestamps, and cold hard government records. And the law still had my name at the bottom of the most important document the entire neighborhood rested on. They'd built every fine, every enforcement letter, every prestigious community pitch on something that legally belonged to the woman they now treated like yesterday's meeting minutes. I didn't reply to a single email. I just let the thread spiral while I made dinner. Listened to the passive-aggressive formatting get more and more desperate. Watched the panic bloom behind every carefully worded, just checking. It's hilarious how loud silence gets when people suddenly realize they need the one person they spent months trying to airbrush out of the group photo. By Wednesday, the whispers had started. Not literal whispers. HOAs don't do open confrontation, but that suffocating hum that travels through neighborhood Facebook groups and backyard fences. The annual lender review was coming up. Big bank. Big loan for the new community center everyone wanted. Investors, well, bankers don't fund vibes. They fund clean title, clear ownership, zero surprises. When the bank asked for trademark confirmation on the community name being refreshed, they expected one simple certificate. What they got instead was a polite legal note, existing individual ownership on record, resolution required before proceeding. I imagine it started as a minor inconvenience in the boardroom. Oh, just some old paperwork. We'll fix it. Then the second look. The archive dive. The cross-check with the USPTO portal. Then the emergency text chain that lit up at 7:30 a.m. On a Saturday. Victoria showed up to the emergency meeting late. Naturally. Still wearing her I woke up like this confidence and carrying a fresh stack of new rule proposals like they were winning lottery tickets. She had no idea the knives were already sharpened. The board sat around the clubhouse table like a group of people who just realized their house was built on quicksand. Victoria launched into her usual spiel about modernizing enforcement and streamlining the brand. The bank liaison on speakerphone cleared his throat once. Twice. Then dropped the bomb. We can't move forward until the trademark ownership is resolved. Current record shows individual ownership by Laura Bennett. File 291. No assignment on record. Victoria blinked. Wait, what do you mean her? The room went graveyard quiet. Someone's coffee cup rattled. Margaret from legal didn't even flinch. She just slid the printed USPTO record across the table like it was a parking ticket from hell. My name. Centered. Bold. Verified by the United States Patent and Trademark Office. Not an opinion. Not a misunderstanding. Fact. You said you handled all the legacy filings, the treasurer muttered, staring at Victoria like she'd grown a second head. I did, Victoria stammered, her perfect posture cracking for the first time. I mean, I assumed everything transferred when we incorporated. You thought wrong, the bank guy said flatly through the speaker. The call ended with a polite but icy, "We'll pause the loan review until this is cleared." The room smelled like fear and stale coffee. Victoria's face went the color of bad mortgage rates. She tried to laugh it off, something about clerical oversight, but nobody joined her. Every board member recalibrated their mental org chart in real time. They didn't say my name out loud yet, but they didn't have to. My shadow was suddenly in every corner, printed on every page, echoing in every legal email, all from one rainy Tuesday decision when nobody was paying attention. The CEO, the board chair, closed a folder with the slow, deliberate motion of a man sealing his own fate. Then he said the only words that mattered. Get her on the phone. The subject line of the email that hit my inbox 2 hours later was simple. We need to talk. No greeting. No apology. Just 5 words from the woman who'd spent the last year calling my contributions legacy noise. I stared at it for exactly 60 seconds, then minimized the window. Instead, I walked upstairs to the black file cabinet in my home office, the one that holds birth certificates, passports, and the quiet receipts of every battle I never bragged about. Fourth drawer down, manila folder, no label, just the single page I'd printed 6 years ago, registration number, owner, date, my name in crisp digital ink wrapped around the most valuable piece of intellectual property Willow Creek had ever touched. They built fines, reputations, and a 6-figure loan application on something that legally belonged to the neighbor they now treated like an expired coupon. I scanned it again, not because I needed reminding, but because holding it felt like holding the spare key after being locked out for years. This wasn't revenge. Not yet. It was just proof. I attached the PDF to a blank email. No subject. No explanation. No passive-aggressive per my last email. Just the document. Let them draw their own conclusions. 3 hours later, the second email arrived. Name your conditions. No threats. No bargaining. Just that. For the first time since the whole mess started, I leaned back in my chair and smiled. Not out of spite. Out of relief. They'd finally remembered who I was. I opened a fresh draft and typed 3 bullet points. Clean. No fluff. No disguised threats. Just terms backed by 6 years of undisturbed government records. Formal transfer of trademark file 291 back to the association with full written acknowledgement of original ownership and my foundational role. Permanent board seat as Community Brand Integrity Director with veto power on any name or logo changes. 5% of any future community improvement funds allocated directly to a discretionary account under my oversight. In perpetuity, I read it twice, then hit send and closed the laptop. No victory lap, no group chat gloating, just the quiet knowledge that the wheels were already turning and I was the only one who knew the brakes were mine. They flew me in, drove me across the neighborhood, like I was visiting royalty. Black sedan, bottled water. The same woman they'd labeled non-essential 6 months ago now being escorted to the clubhouse with my name on a little tablet at the entrance. Irony, so thick you could spread it on toast. The boardroom hadn't changed. Still sterile beige walls, trying too hard to look modern. Except this time the energy was different. Tense. Like everyone was waiting for the first glass to shatter. They'd already placed the documents neatly in front of each chair. Margaret gave me the tiniest nod as I took my seat at the head of the table for the first time. Victoria's chair was conspicuously empty. Rumors said she'd taken personal leave. Others whispered consulting transition. The corporate HOA version of being gently escorted out the back door. The board chair opened with some vague nonsense about alignment and restoring integrity. The kind of corporate speak you use when you want credit for cleaning up the mess you created. I didn't interrupt. I let him flounder while my 3 conditions sat printed in 12-point font on the official agenda like a loaded gun on the table. They went line by line. The trademark would be reassigned with formal acknowledgement of my original ownership. The board seat was accepted without a single counteroffer, permanent, with the exact veto power I'd requested. The 5% fund clause passed after only one nervous cough from the treasurer. The final line simply read, Strategic Partner, Brand Integrity, a title with no expiration date and no ceiling. I signed last. Same signature that had lived on file 291 all these years. Now engraved into the future, they tried to gatekeep without me. When the meeting ended, the board chair offered a handshake. I took it, not out of respect, but ritual. After everyone filed out, I stayed a moment longer, staring at the leather-bound folder containing the signed transfer documents. 6 years ago, they didn't think it mattered who filed the original paperwork. They thought names were interchangeable. Roles replaceable. Now, mine wasn't just on the document. It was in the contract, in the ownership, in the story they'd have to tell every new homeowner from now on. And I never once had to raise my voice. The office they gave me wasn't flashy. No glass walls, no corner view of the golf course. Just a quiet room in the community center with clean lines and a door that actually closed. Something rare in a neighborhood that used to pride itself on open collaboration, until open collaboration became open micromanagement. It smelled like fresh paper and the lavender oil someone from facilities had tried to use to soften the space. They didn't realize I didn't need softening. I needed clarity and one very important frame. It hung behind my new desk, slightly off-center. No gold trim, no dramatic lighting. Just a simple black frame housing the single page that started everything. Trademark filed 291. Certified copy. April 19th. Owner, Laura Bennett. To anyone else, it looked like boring government paperwork. To me, it was the foundation stone. The receipt for every late-night covenant draft. Every ignored email. Every seat at the table I'd never been invited to until the table started collapsing. On my third day in the new role, a nervous new board analyst, probably no older than the trademark itself, stepped into my office clutching a notepad. Sorry, she said, pointing at the frame. What's that? I didn't answer right away. I just took a breath, the kind that fills a room without needing volume. Then I turned and said simply, that's the moment they found out who I was. She blinked, nodded, jotted something down even though it wasn't really a note. Then she left quietly, the way people do when they realize they've just stepped into history instead of a meeting. That's the thing about real recognition. You don't have to demand it when it finally shows up on its own terms. The days got quieter after that. No more scrambling to justify my existence. No more being edited out of emails or left off invite lists. The board still met. Victoria's replacement still postured. But now there was a pause when my name came up. A beat of respect that hadn't been there before. Not because I threatened anyone. Not because I tore the place down. But because when the storm hit, I was the only one holding the deed. I never saw Victoria again. Word was she took a break to find her voice. I hope she finds it somewhere far away from any microphone or clipboard. Sometimes I catch myself staring at that frame page. Not because I need to relive the fight, but because I like how little it says. No vengeance. No victory dance. Just a quiet fact. I was here. I mattered. And I still do. People think legacies have to be loud. Big speeches. Viral moments. Dramatic exits. But sometimes a legacy is just black ink on white paper and a name the neighborhood will never forget again. And every time a new resident drives past the Willow Creek Estate sign, they'll see the same logo I designed 6 years ago. The same one Victoria tried to bury. The same one that now carries my acknowledgement in the official records. They can change the rules. They can repaint the mailboxes. But they can't change the name on the deed. That's the sweetest part. The quietest revenge isn't screaming. It's simply existing in the paperwork they thought they could erase. The best part came months later, during the annual homeowner meeting. The same clubhouse where Victoria once strutted like royalty was now packed with neighbors who'd lived through her reign of terror. The new board chair opened with the usual budget slides. But when it came time for the brand update section, he paused, looked straight at me in the front row. And for the first time in HOA history, someone actually read the acknowledgement out loud. We want to recognize the foundational contributions of Laura Bennett, original filer of trademark 291 and permanent brand integrity director. Without her vision, Willow Creek Estates wouldn't be the community we all call home. A ripple went through the crowd. Not applause exactly. HOA meetings don't do standing ovations, but the kind of respectful nod that travels like a wave. Mrs. Alvarez, still bitter about her rose citation, actually smiled at me. The Johnsons, who still paid that ridiculous basketball hoop fine, gave me a thumbs up. Even a guy who'd been fined for his political flag last year shot me a wink that said everything. Victoria's replacement tried to move on quickly to the new enforcement budget, but the damage was done. The story was out. The ghost had been given a microphone, and the microphone was legal, permanent, and framed on my wall. Later that evening, I sat on my porch with a glass of wine, watching the sunset paint the perfectly manicured lawns that Victoria once policed like a prison warden. My phone buzzed once, a text from Margaret. Just wanted to say nice work. The bank loan cleared this morning. They loved the clean title. I didn't reply with emojis or gloating. Just a simple thumbs up. Because this was never about winning. It was about being seen. About making sure the people who try to erase you learned that some ink doesn't fade. And somewhere in the quiet streets of Willow Creek Estates, a new generation of homeowners will grow up knowing the rules were written by more than just one loud voice in a blazer. They'll know the name on the deed matters. They'll know that sometimes the quietest neighbor is the one holding all the cards. I finished my wine, stood up, and walked inside. Behind my desk, the framed document caught the last light of day. Just black ink on white paper. But to me, it was louder than any HOA fine, any smug speech, any attempted erasure. It said, I was here. I built this. And they will never forget it again. That's the real power. Not the title. Not the 5%. Not even the veto. It's the quiet knowledge that when they tried to write me out of the story itself refused to let them. And in the end, the only person who got erased was the Karen who thought she could do it.